If you're gonna do Tacoma mods, you've got to have the right tools. It's tool time with RobMotive. Well, good morning, everybody. How are you today? Pretty good here, that's right. It is tool time with RobMotive. You know, if you're gonna do Tacoma mods, you have to have the right tools because there's nothing that can make a simple mod go wrong than not having the right tools to do it. So we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna start with the mundane and move to the more exotic. Not really exotic, but first of all, just a simple pair of scissors. You know, you never know when you're gonna need to cut a piece of tubing or cut a piece of insulation back. Pair of simple scissors makes that job really, really easy and even a little bit more extreme, you know, for something that's a little tougher to cut, something a little more robust like this. Next up, Allen wrenches. You need to have both standard and metric, or standard and metric. You know, there's always an Allen bolt, an Allen key. It seems like everything comes with some sort of an Allen screw these days. Get yourself a couple of sets, again, standard and metric. Next up, sockets. You have to have a good socket set, right? And don't skimp here, right? I've bought cheapo socket sets in the past where the ratchet strips out. It doesn't work anymore. Don't do that. I've had this set that I have here for, I don't know, 350 years, something like that. It's just a simple Craftsman set, right? This one happens to be metric. There are tons of metric bolts and metric fasteners on the Toyota Tacoma. You need a metric set, particularly the holy grail, which is the 10 millimeter, right? Guard this thing. You're gonna need it a lot. Also, deep wells. You're gonna need deep well sockets. Now, this is where I would get both metric and standard, because chances are you're gonna be covered with the standard size with just the deep well. So you don't need a whole nother set of short sockets in the standard form. Get metric and get yourself some standard. Next up, Torx bits. There's a lot of Torx bit screws and bolts and things all over the Tacoma. Get yourself a set of these. You're gonna need them. Next up, some sort of more robust cutting scissors. You know, these will cut through anything. And actually, I'm not sure you can find these anymore. You can find versions of them though. These things cut everything and they stay sharp. I've had them for years. Everything from metal to cloth, you name it, paper, they work excellently. Grab yourself a pair of these, they'll come in handy. Next up, a crescent wrench. You know, there's all kinds of different sizes of these. I would go with one middle of the road. I wouldn't get a real short one, although they can come in handy, but something middle of the road like this. You know, when you need to hold a bolt down that you can't get a socket over and maybe a wrench won't fit or you just don't have the right size, this is adjustable. Doesn't matter whether it's metric, whether it's standard, a good crescent wrench comes in handy. Next up, screwdrivers. You've got to have screwdrivers. Again, don't skimp on the screwdrivers. These happen to be Milwaukee. I have, I don't know how many cheapo versions in my tool chest over there, and it never fails. They strip at the head, right? Particularly the Phillips type. If you get a cheapo set that's not hardened steel like these are, they're gonna strip. Now, I would also suggest that you get something that's magnetic, because when you're reaching down in somewhere with a long screwdriver like this and you're trying to get the bolt out, and you can't reach your hand down there, there is nothing worse than pulling that screw out and it drops somewhere in the engine bay, hopefully on the floor if you're lucky. Get one that's magnetized, and you're gonna need both flathead and Phillips. There's probably a decent mix, although more Phillips I would say than flathead in the Tacoma, but both will come in handy. Get yourself a range of sizes because there's always gonna be different ones. Next, just a simple cheapo little flathead screwdriver. I can't tell you how many times I've used this, either to position things, pull something out like those little push pins, things like that. Maybe push in the push pin. You know, some of them have that little nub in the middle that you push in and then it pops out. Something like this comes in very, very handy. And if you can get one that has a magnet on the end of it, even better, again, to reach down and grab screws or things that might be in a spot that you can't quite reach them. Next up, pliers. You have to have pliers. Of course, you got your simple standard pliers. These are adjustable. Definitely need to have a pair of these. They come in very handy. Needle nose pliers, same kind of thing, and get some that are moderately long. You don't want the ones that are 8 feet long, but you don't want the ones that are an inch long, because you need to be able to reach down to grab things sometimes, pull things out. They work really, really well for that. And I have found that a middle of the road size-wise covers everything. You don't need to have 10 different pairs when you just have a middle of the road size. Now, one thing I discovered recently, I was trying to crimp some kind of wire connection I was doing, and I was trying to use this type of plier, right? Because I didn't have a regular crimper. You buy those, they're like, I don't know, 5 times as much as just a pair of pliers. But if you get yourself a big, more robust pair of pliers, it gives you more leverage to be able to put the pressure that you need to crimp those wire connectors down. I don't know how many times before I wised up and got something that actually works that I used a regular pair of pliers and I just couldn't get the leverage I needed to clamp it down, and then the wire pulls out. Nothing worse than that. Next up, a pair of wire cutters. These come in handy not only for cutting wire, but little plastic nubs, little pieces that you might need to trim. These are very handy, and I definitely suggest getting a pair of wire cutters. Now, you're gonna need wrenches, right? And of course, we have metric and we have standard. So I would get a couple of sets of wrenches, just like this, right? They're standard, they're metric, there's all kinds of different sizes. Again, we have the all important 10 millimeter right here. Gotta have a 10 millimeter. And again, make sure you grab a standard as well, because there's always going to be some kind of a fastener or something in there that you're going to need a standard wrench for, right? Now, I will, again, caution you, get something that's quality. Craftsman, Milwaukee, Snap-on, something that's not going to break. Craftsman, and I'm not sure if they still do, but for years they had a lifetime warranty, right? If you broke one, took it in, they give you a new one. I believe Snap-on does the same thing, and I'm sure there are others out there that do that. But get yourself a good set that you can depend on. Now, if we're gonna get a little bit more specialized now, and let's face it, if you're doing Tacoma mods, you're probably gonna get into some electrical work down the road, right? Couple of things. Get yourself a wire stripper. I used to use just a knife, right? Like a carpet knife. I would kind of try to cut the wires. Inevitably, I'd cut one of the little strands of wire off, so now it's not as good as it was before. Get yourself just a cheapo pair of wire cutters. You don't need anything expensive. It's got the little sizing things in here so you can cut the wire the way that you need it, or cut the insulation off the way that you need it. Electrical tape. This stuff is gold. A buddy of mine, Randall, says, use electrical tape. It's cheap. And I agree, it is cheap. You can electrical tape up anything that you need to, and there are a million uses for this stuff. Always handy to have around. A soldering iron. Again, if you're going to be doing any kind of electrical work, I use this thing all the time, more than I ever thought I would have, to make connections and things. Good to have one of these. Couple more things, a couple of kits here. A terminal kit. It has various size connectors and splices and things like that for electrical work. Need to have one of these. That way you're not right in the middle of a job and you can't find one, or the one that you have is too big or too small. And lastly, shrink tape, or shrink tubing, I should say. This stuff comes in very, very handy. Again, for electrical connections, you just whip a piece of this over it, grab your heat gun, shrink it down, anything to get a nice good seal so that you don't have any kind of water or problems where you're going to have leakage into that little connection that you made. Water and electric just don't go well together. Get yourself a set of these. I've used them I don't know how many times. They come in very, very handy. Anyway, I just wanted to get on here, kind of go over what I think are must-have tools, things that if you're particularly beginning, just starting out to do your own Tacoma mods and things, you need to have this stuff. And even if you're a seasoned professional and you've been cutting corners and using a tool that might work, but it's not so good, these are the things that you have to have. Leave a comment. Let me know if you agree. If there's anything that I don't have that you've discovered makes things easier when it comes to doing Tacoma mods, I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, if you're interested, I have 2 additional channels. RobMotive JT, all about my 2020 Jeep Gladiator. And RobMotive Civic, about my experiences with the Honda Civic Type R and the Honda Civic Sport Hatchback. Check them out, and if you're interested, why wouldn't you subscribe? Don't forget to click that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And do me a favor, smash that subscribe button on the way out. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.